Hey there, Kenneth French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by.
Hey kids, are you ready to hear from the heart of Wall Street, from the heart of what's going on globally as far as finance, retirement planning, and exit planning for entrepreneurs? We're hanging out with David Wilson. What's up, David?
Nice to meet you, Kenner. I'm excited for the conversation today.
I like that because everyone likes to hear what's going on in the heart of finance, and that's Wall Street. And obviously, you're working on Wall Street. You've been working on Wall Street for years, so you're going to add some value to those who are watching and listening. So right off the bat, give us one tip for someone who's an entrepreneur, well-heeled, let's say they're, I don't know, 5 million bucks, and they want some advice as far as finance goes. And again, they could be a business owner selling widgets or services.
So I think the thing that moves the needle the most, I find when working with business owners, entrepreneurs, is to have that exit in mind as they're sort of building their businesses. And so, what that really means is, getting the business ready, getting personally ready, and financially ready. And so, they could be a couple years or a couple decades away from an exit transaction or process. And but sort of just doing that, thinking ahead of time, can go a long way to sort of making a more valuable business, and of course, just fulfilling personal and financial as well as business goals.
I like that. I call it working backwards. I don't know if you're going to totally agree with me, but if you know your goals, down the road, let's say in whatever 5, 10 years, you work backwards to see what you need to do now to get to that point. I think it's really smart. So, real quickly, why you? Because I always forget why you. Why do you have that expertise in that world?
Yeah, I think it goes back to my background. I worked in a family business as a kid, spending weekends and summers and my grandparents' different businesses. And what I found, we're sort of like the sum of our experiences, right? And so what ended up happening, they lost one of their businesses because they didn't have the proper coverages. They made a series of sort of bad real estate transactions. They didn't have their estate in place. And so, they went through a years long probate process after they passed. And so, I was sort of inspired to say, hey, I want to work with entrepreneurs and business owners so that they don't make these mistakes. And so we go through our checklist and make sure that, they're doing the right things in all these different areas, whether it's, tax, estate planning, real estate, and so on.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's sad, by the way. Sorry to hear that. The reason we affiliated with a law firm, that being vast assetdefense.com, is because we kept hearing stories about people losing their businesses or whatever, maybe to a lawsuit. Who wants to be whatever 50, 60 years old and lose all their assets to a lawsuit, or they don't have their estate plan in place? But that's for another maybe episode. But all right, so let's talk a little. And what's your background? Because I know you're an investment banker, et cetera. Why don't you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, out of college, I took a job in investment banking, and what ended up happening was, wasn't totally sure I'd be in that career the rest of my life. So I started taking these certifications. I knew I love finance. I discovered I love financial planning, started kind of doing it as a hobby on the side. It was such that, I put together kind of a rent versus buy spreadsheet, and that kind of floated through the office, and people would kind of come by and ask me little sort of tidbits about financial planning. And then eventually I made that my full-time career and my passion and opened up this business. Finally became an entrepreneur myself about 5 years ago during the pandemic. So
That's very smart. That's very, very smart. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, all these people who are going to be watching and listening to this are entrepreneurs. So that's good that you're walking the same path that they and as much and me as well. So, all right. So help me to understand a little bit more about kind of the exit planning of what you do. Because I think that adds a lot of value. Because if someone could, help someone put together a good plan for exit, and they exit making whatever an extra 10%, that's 10% more that they can use in retirement as an example. Let's talk about your exit planning strategy a little bit.
yeah, I mean, I think it really makes sense to sort of think through the whole life cycle of the business, right? From formation to growth. Some businesses hit maturity and plateau, and then and some keep going. And what's that sort of exit plan? And I think that when we're focused on exit planning from the get go, when there's a formation of the business, there's all sorts of planning opportunities, and we can really move the ball forward, right? In terms of like getting them personally ready, financially ready, getting the business ready. And for some of that, really, on the business ready side, I know this is kind of a tough pill to swallow for many people, is that frankly is making the business owner essentially irrelevant to the business, right? And so you have the systems in place, you have the roles defined, you have the management development in place, and sort of a systematic sales process from marketing to sales, top of the funnel down to closing and getting high retention. So that way it's a more valuable business when, whether that's a private equity firm coming in later to look at the business, or a strategic buyer, potentially even a family succession. The more you sort of put those systems in place, the more look at it from the buyer's perspective. Even though you're not going to sell the business could be more valuable, potentially get a higher multiple on EBITDA. And it's sort of, kind of different things along the way that we kind of like business owners to keep working on, whether it's, okay, well, if you're going to do, and depending on what their goals are, right? So if they want a staged transaction, maybe it makes sense to do an ESOP transaction one day. And then, so, how do they get ready for that? Or if it's a high growth, venture backed business, well, maybe they might want to convert from an LLC to a C Corp. And so that needs to be done years in advance. And so all these sort of different structuring things, these educations things around, charitable impact, the structures there, on the tax mitigation side, so many of these things need to happen like years in advance, right? Like, I think we all know that we can tax loss harvest our portfolios, but you can kind of build those things, for example, for years and years and years in advance, and then apply them against a transaction, if it's going to be capital gains. But again, it could be a different sort of transaction as well, and sort of educating business owners, what are the structures that it could be helpful, and what are the changes they can make to the business that could be helpful as well.
Yeah, you're speaking my language there, buddy. I like that. Preaching to the choir. That's wicked smart, because it's kind of it's crazy that people don't think about that. They just think about being in their business, working on it. I get that. I get increasing that net worth based on the business, but there's so many other things that are tangential that you have to do surrounding that are peripheral to the business, that really is what makes it, and it increases value. I totally agree with that. And if people do, again, if they can increase the value of their company, let's say, on exit by X%, that's going to help them down the road. And usually it doesn't take that much of an investment to do that in time and maybe even resources. So what you're talking about is very smart.
And then, so many people in, my particular industry, financial planners, advisors, they're talking to business owners, and they're kind of jumping up and down and saying, hey, you know what? You got to diversify out of the business. That's the best thing. Get them in a, cash balance plan or a profit sharing plan. And, that might not be appropriate, right? Want to really peel back the layer, like what's the actual rate of return within the business? If you're getting high teens or, low mid 20s, that's a valuable business that you need to reinvest that growth and create a larger, more profitable asset. And, clipping, it sort of historically in the US markets at 8 to 9% is probably not going to do it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, every situation is a little bit different, right? So,
I totally agree, especially at the same time, even if you can work in your business, get it really running, and you can do another investment, and it diversifies you that much better. Maybe something like what happened to your family, sadly, might not happen because you're diversified, you're doing other stuff. Totally makes sense. It totally makes sense. And of course, you're smart because you learned all this stuff from living in Wall Street in New York, and you have the smartest people around you, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's smart people all over the country, right? And I think that, New York City is a great sense in terms of how dense it is, and the ability sort of just to meet different people, from all walks of life, that come from all over, not just the country, but all over the world, to kind of make their way in kind of different, whatever their vertical is. It's a great place, and to sort of meet all these people, and to do business, and as well, just to be surrounded by a lot of different investment ideas and tax ideas and other things like that. But most of the client base is in New York. But for sure, New York doesn't monopolize the ideas on good investments or good planning. So for sure.
It doesn't. I know. We have an actuary in New York, so we have an office in New York, and he gets so many good ideas, even though he's a nerdy New York actuary. But he gets so many good ideas from being in New York. So I think that's a benefit. We benefit our clients because I think that's a hub of information as far as finance goes, and it helps us be able to operate because we're getting that much information from a focus area, as in this example, New York. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's cool you're from New York. I really do. I think it's a good thing.
It's interesting where, sometimes we host these business owner roundtables, get a dozen business owners in the same room, and some of them kind of, just live a mile away or up the street. And so to get people, on short notice like that, and to understand, okay, what's the trends that are going on in, this, your manufacturing business and your marketing business. And so we can kind of just share and all grow our businesses together is super valuable for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit more about some themes, some overall themes that you guys are usually talking to about your clients, not at exit, but just in general. What are some themes so we can understand a little bit more about kind of how you think, and who knows, maybe there's going to be someone who's interested in your services or some of the other stuff you talk about as far as resources, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you financial literacy is a huge problem in our country, right? In terms of it's not taught in schools. People just sort of, they learn from, their friends, or, they take the initiative to go on podcasts like this. And so oftentimes, we meet people that are so successful in their businesses, but don't necessarily have the skills, right? And we really highly encourage people to say, hey, you know what, like, financial literacy is something that you should be working on your entire life. And so, in sort of the 5 levers of financial literacy, whether that's, 1, saving, 2, investing, 3, protecting what you have, 4, managing debt correctly, and then the last one being sort of minimizing your taxes, in a legal way. And so, the more people kind of learning in those different areas, the more they're going to make progress on their net worth. And I think that's a key issue we'd love to impart, is that, financial literacy, builds your team, because most people can't be an expert in every area, but, really take it seriously and build that skill over your lifetime to really think about how you can grow your net worth.
Yeah, you and I speak the same language because obviously we're into taxes. I mean, years ago when I got into the business, this company's been around, vastsolutionsgroup.com, in a different, format since 1969. I took over in 2006. By the way, you're watching and listening Ken French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're hanging out with David Wilson, who's from New York, and he runs a investment management firm, financial planning firm. Anyway, what I would say is I didn't like taxes. Taxes wasn't my thing, right? And then I started figuring out from talking to all our business owner clients that that's their biggest issue. If they can lower tax liability by X, whatever it is, I don't know, 10, 20%, whatever, that's just that much less that they have to work in retirement, or maybe they can hire another person to grow the revenue. So I love the fact that you brought that in as a pillar to what you're doing. So let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind. What are some kind of tax strategies that some of your clients employ to hopefully lower tax liability legally, ethically, and morally? I like how you said legally, by the way. Nice work.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I would sort of divide it up into 4 categories, right? And when we think about sort of how we approach taxes, there's sort of a whole area of, okay, well, the structuring of the entities, it can impact your taxes over long periods of time, right? So you could start a business, you want to flow through those losses, LLC, tax as a partnership, kind of do that. But if you're a fast growing business and want to qualify for, qualify small business stock and get a 10 times basis, or $10 million capital gains exemption if you sell that business, maybe you're a C corp instead, right? And so that sort of entity part of it is one part. I think everyone kind of knows this sort of deferral game, right? Like deferring taxes through cash balance plans, 401ks, SEP IRAs, whatever it is. There's all different flavors, and I think that so oftentimes we see people say, "Hey, like, oh, I want a 401k," and I'm like, "Oh, I want a SEP IRA." And I'm like, "Well, what are we really trying to accomplish here? Are you trying to get attracts and retain talents?" And so maybe the 401k might be there, but there's more fees, for example, than your sort of SEP IRA. Are you trying to sort of just sprint at the end of your career in your sort of 50s or something like that, and collect a lot of money pre-tax? And so that cash balance might make sense. And so that's sort of a second set of category of tax savings. As well, just the credits and deductions, which I think that, a lot of people that are really kind of focused on that area. And so, that's where people would work with their CPAs and say, hey, okay, well, like, these are credits I can take or deductions I could take. And then I guess the last piece of when we think about people saving money, it's just emphasizing one type of tax versus another, right? And so if you have investments, if you've held it for 9 months, you want to sell it, does it really make sense to pay short-term capital gains versus kind of waiting 3 more months and pay long-term capital gains? Or are there things you can do when you actually sell your business? A lot of buyers, they're going to want an asset sale. And so, the potential double taxation there and kind of allocation to, for example, different assets, and it might throw out, you might get ordinary income there. Whereas you might take a lower price if you sell the business and sell it as a stock sale, but oftentimes buyers don't like that. So kind of all, sort of those 4 different areas of like, okay, well, the entity side, the deferral kind of category, one tax over the other, and then of course the deductions and credits. So the kind of the 4 areas we think that business owners should be thinking through with their team. People like yourself and your team when they're trying to save taxes.
Look at you. Wilson knows what's up. That's exactly everything you've talked about makes total sense. Especially, by the way, tax credits. I think a lot of people are missing that. And it's incredible, especially with everyone using AI nowadays, that they should be thinking about the tax credits that are afforded to them by the usually federal government and usually the state government, depending on the circumstance. They're missing that, and that's sad because that's money that people are just walking over. That I wish more advisors were talking about that. So that's impressive. You even brought that up. By the way, speaking of,
sorry.
No, go ahead. Go.
Just that you incorporate AI on the tax side because the tax, it's so vast, right? And the laws are changing all the time. And so, oftentimes when people kind of have the tools in their toolkit, certain CPAs are saying, hey, you should use this. This is the credit here. And these things are changing all the time, right? And again, like the TCJA, does that get extended? What will that morph into? It's probably going to happen, right? Like, I don't know, maybe December 22nd, like it did last time in 2017. And then it's a mad scramble to see how does this impact your business in all these different ways. And so, just having a systematic way, leveraging technology to do that as well to aid us is super helpful for sure.
Yeah. And what's funny is, by the way, one of our family members or team members, I should say, uses taxcreditintel.com. Again, taxcreditintel.com, which is a resource for financial advisors, et cetera, that talk about R&D tax credits. So if people are interested in learning a little bit more about tax credits, and who knows if they could even get access to them, even though they don't think they can, go to taxcreditintel.com. But by the way, I'm gonna forget. I know that I don't want to do this. How do we get a hold of you if people want to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I mean, people can just Google David Flores Wilson. There's a few David Wilsons that are financial advisors out there. So David Flores Wilson, you can find my LinkedIn and connect, or our website, and just reach out and schedule time. So.
I like it. So what's one kind of closing comment just before we close the doors about, maybe add some value to some business owners out there?
Yeah, I would say that, another piece is build the team, right? And also keep in mind that as people grow their businesses, is that their advisors may not be leveling up like they are in their own businesses. And so they may reach another level that they might have to reach out and sort of upgrade some of their advisors, whether that's on the tax, investment side, insurance side, whatever it is. I think that, the keen eye that they put towards their business and, marketing and execution, they should also sort of, apply that to the team as well.
I like it. Once again, how does someone get a hold of you if they're interested in learning about what you do or some of your solutions to problems for entrepreneurs as far as exit management, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, just find me on LinkedIn at David Flores Wilson, or at our website at sincerusadv.com.
Ooh, can you spell all that really quickly for me?
SINCRUSADV.com.
Got it. And it's David Wilson. Once again, this is Kenneth French, Bass Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Thanks, everybody.